No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Something is about to break.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to About to Break. I'm your host, Taylor Hughes, and this was an awesome week. I just finished up a run of shows at the Magic Castle in Hollywood, which I have to tell you, for a magician, there's no better place in the world to perform. 90% of the time I'm doing corporate events, which I love doing, but nobody came to see the show. It's always like a surprise. There's a banquet or a sales meeting or a trade show, and then there happens to be some entertainment. But here at the Magic Castle, it's the only place where people came and they wanted to see magic, and they say hi to the owl on the bookshelf, and the bookshelf slides out of the way Harry Potter style. And for the first time since you were a kid, you have a Santa Claus moment. It's wonderful. I had a blast. It was so great, and I can't wait to go back and do it again. This next week, I'm headed to Fargo, North Dakota, and then I go from Fargo to Houston, Texas, spend a couple days there performing, and then I go off to Twin Falls, Idaho. So it's a busy week, but I am so excited that you're taking the time right now to listen to this conversation with Eddie Furth. I met Eddie when we both got booked to do kind of an industrial commercial. This is one of those things where it's like a regular commercial shoot, but it's a company that spent a lot of money to make a kind of an internal video. And it was the craziest video shoot I've ever been on. It was 12 people crammed into a limousine. And it was supposed to be like an old school Vegas thing. So I played the magician. Eddie was bald, and so they painted his face blue, and he was a Blue Man Group guy. They had an Elvis impersonator, and then also a little person playing an Elvis as well. So it was like a dual Elvis thing. It was the weirdest shoot I've ever been on in my life. Super weird. The only redemptive thing from it is I got to meet Eddie Furth, who, I mentioned this in the podcast, but he is a renaissance man of entertainment. He does stand-up comedy. He's an actor. He works at Universal as a raptor tangler. So if you've ever seen the Chris Pratt guy who's out there keeping the dinosaurs in check, that's what he does for a day job. He's also the co-host of two great LA shows. One's called Fictional Roast, and the other one is Historical Roast. Next one they've got coming up, I want to plug this for him, Tuesday, January 17th. It's at 9 p.m., and it's at the Nerdist Showroom at Meltdown Comics. It's going to be the roast of the Avengers. That's right, it's a fictional roast of the Avengers. And if they can't avenge the Earth, well, we'll damn sure roast them for it. That's what Eddie says. Tickets available now, $8 online, $10 at the door. And then the next Tuesday, January 24th, at 10 p.m., he's going to be in the Belly Room at the world-famous Comedy Store, and it's the historical roast of, get this, Helen Keller. Don't worry, folks. She won't be able to hear anything they say about her. Tickets are available right now for $5 online. They'll also have tickets available at the door. It's 21 and over, and it's a 2-drink minimum, so make sure you check that out. My conversation with Eddie was so incredible, and we covered so much great stuff that we're actually going to be doing this as a 2-part series. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of the incredible Eddie Furth.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
And someday, you're going to be a big star.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me. We'll make a film about a man that's sad and lonely. And all I gotta do is act naturally. Well, I'll bet you I'm a grown.
I always like to start this thing off with a really profound thought.
Do you have one for today?
No, not at all. This is About to Break, and I am here with Eddie Furth, and we are in Sherman Oaks.
Sherman Oaks, California.
Sherman Oaks, California. Tell me about Sherman Oaks.
This is officially the Valley.
This is it. So when people say the Valley, they're referring to right here.
But I also feel like when I was watching Saved by the Bell as a kid, this wasn't the Valley from Valley High. Like, remember,
no.
Did you watch Saved by the Bell?
Oh, yeah.
I was huge. On Saved by the Bell.
I watched Saved by the Bell, and then California Dreams came on right after that.
I like that show, too.
I love it, man. They were surf dudes with attitude.
And Hoop, what was it, Hoop Dreams? With Reggie Theus?
Oh, yes!
And he played the coach.
Oh, TV was so good. That was when TV really... It was like a thing.
And Anthony Anderson got his start on Hoop Dreams.
I didn't even realize that was him.
I swear to God, because I used to play basketball.
Yeah.
I got one of my moves from that show. It was this great crossover dribble from the stand. I remember it. He was just holding it and then boom, crossover right away. I got
love
that
it.
from Anthony Anderson.
I like that other kids have like posters of Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and little Eddie Furth has Anthony Anderson.
He could sort of ball.
Yeah.
He could act like he was playing ball very well.
Oh man. Now all I can think about is the theme songs were better then too. Like we had theme songs, and they were long. They were like full length songs.
I probably still have it somewhere. I owned the Saved by the Bell like soundtrack on CD.
There was a soundtrack.
Yeah, and because they had a lot of good songs. Because they also had the Friends Forever.
Yes.
From that great episode where Casey Kasem was like the Zach attack.
And then Zach had the band. Yep.
And then he got mad at everyone and turned into Vanilla Ice.
Oh, that is so funny.
Because he was dating his agent, or whoever she was, like the manager.
Yes. I feel like some good times happened at the Max.
The best times.
The best times. Yeah, sometimes they'd turn it into like that's where their prom was sometimes. Like just like at a diner.
There's a great podcast by a comedian, April Richardson. It's called Go Bayside.
Okay.
And she would get people to come on and they would watch an episode of Saved by the Bell and then talk about it. And one of her points was she would always bring up how the Max was this, like it's obviously a private business.
Right.
But like the kids would go to lunch there. So it was sort of the cafeteria and what's the layout, like how close to school is it?
Right.
But you're right, they would just have prom there. They'd have school functions at the Max.
Yeah.
But in my town, like, you couldn't go to the Bull's Head Diner and just close the diner down. Like, we would try. We would all convene there, but other customers were still allowed.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, there was that episode where Zach and Slater had to make up to Kelly and Jesse because they were being jerks about Kelly's, like, ex-boyfriend was coming to town, and Zach was like, well, you can't date him. You can't go out to lunch with him. He's got a Ferrari. Yeah. And Slater was like, you know what we're going to do for our anniversary? We're going to the Raiders game. And she was like, we're going to the ballet. And they fought, and so they rented out the Max at like 2 a.m. to put on a little like I'm sorry play.
And Max always did magic. He'd always do. That guy's a magician. Do you know Ed Alonzo?
Oh my God, I know all about Ed Alonzo.
Oh man, he's got the funniest show.
Do you know Ed? Have you worked with him? Or?
No, we've crossed paths a lot, like especially at the castle. But I don't know him personally. But I think he's brilliant.
I also heard that he did like a lot of large illusions for like Britney Spears.
He did circus tour, and then he was actually he was doing stuff for the Michael Jackson tour, the last tour that was going to happen.
Yeah,
and they were like in rehearsals and everything when he passed.
That was a great movie. This Is It, the concert footage.
I have not seen it.
I've also heard all kinds of rumors, like they filled in with footage with an imposter and all.
Oh, really?
But
yeah.
I'm a big Michael fan, and that movie is brilliant. I cried when I watched it. I went to the theater to see it.
Untouchable.
So yeah, from the Max to Michael Jackson.
From the Max to Michael Jackson in the first like 5 minutes, we've covered it all.
And what a career for Ed Alonzo to go from Saved by the Bell to working with Michael and Brittany.
Yeah, he's like best buddies with NPH, man. Him and Neil Patrick Harris. They're like, now you run into a lot of magicians. You've done stuff. I know. You've done stuff with Justin and a bunch of guys, and for those of you who are listening right now, and first of all, is this your cat or your roommate's cat?
That's my roommate's cat.
That cat is amazing. This cat is just sprawled out.
Don't encourage him. He's a jerk. Like 7 a.m, I'll wake up to get ready for work, and I'll walk past the cat, and he'll just claw. I have scratch marks on my ankles because he'll just claw at me.
Really? Because he wants attention, or just because he doesn't like you?
Both.
He thinks you're taking over.
Both. No, this is Lincoln's apartment. We're all renting space from Lincoln.
Okay.
I'm mad I just gave Lincoln a shout out on the podcast.
Are we going to edit it out?
Just put a bleep over it. Put a meow sound
over it. We'll put a meow
it.
sound. Every time you mention your roommate's name, which his name is... I'm going to do that. That'll be fantastic.
So in that regard, I don't know if I ever actually said this to you specifically. I like entertainment in almost all forms and fashions.
Yeah.
Magic is one of my absolute hands down favorites.
Really?
Oh,
I thought you were gonna say I love everything but magic.
No,
that's usually
so much so in the other way. I've been conscious to not learn very much about it. In terms of the execution.
Interesting. Because you want to keep the mystery.
I do.
Yeah. Give me a Santa Claus moment.
there's very little in life that has that. Look, and we're going to use the word magic in this instance.
Right. Yeah.
For both sides, but that kind of magic of suspending your disbelief, of not knowing how, of you know, like I went and saw Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I also know more or less how they execute all that.
Right.
You know, I've studied what Benedict Cumberbatch has to do to get into that space to be an actor. I understand how to create those effects with a camera and with post-production.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I study comedians and how to make a joke funny. Like, what's that strategy? I also was a huge wrestling fan growing up, and now I work in wrestling, so I know. But with magic, even as friendly as I've gotten with magicians, I'm always, I might have an observation of how to place a show together. Like I would say, oh, you could put that bit here, that bit there. But I'll never ask how it was done.
Oh,
I don't want to know.
I love that.
I still go to the castle like a child and just wonder at it. Like, oh my God. Like,
see, and when people ask me, well, you do a bit and people go, come on, really, I just want to know how you did that one. The truth is, and I tell them, you don't want to know. Like, especially if you enjoy this, the last thing you want is to be disappointed with the simplicity of how, you know, a lot of it, it's the secret is very simple. It's pulling off that really obvious thing and having no one see it, you know? I had a friend who she's a dancer, and she says, it's weird because I've spent my entire life practicing for hours and hours so that people notice every slight movement of everything I'm doing, that it's just completely apparent to them what I'm doing. And you spent hours and hours so people don't notice a thing you're doing.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a fun little...
I get that at the park. So
Yeah.
I work at a theme park.
Yeah,
I work at one of
yeah.
the major theme parks in the area. I'm not employed by a mouse.
Right.
No, I work at Universal, and
Yeah.
I'm a raptor handler.
Yeah.
And there's a 10-foot tall, 15-foot long raptor.
I love it.
And I play the sort of Chris Pratt trainer to keep it in check. And people all the time ask, is it a robot? Is it a person? Is it
You
real?
can't
Is it
tell.
this?
Like, you cannot. It's...
Also, even the people who insist that they want to know,
Yeah.
what they really want is for me to never break.
Right.
It's more special if I don't break character.
Oh,
If I just,
love it.
even the times where I'm like, no, man, that's a living, breathing dinosaur, and the person like pushes back, like, come on, dude, just tell me. I'm like, no, you don't want me to break
Okay.
character. You want me to stay committed, because the minute I let that guard down, not only is the magic gone, but then I'm just the regular Joe earning a paycheck versus the character and the.
Man, this is honestly, this sounds kind of funky, but this is super therapeutic for me today specifically, because at lunchtime I had lunch with a good friend who also is a performer, and I said, you know what, man, if we ever want to be successful, we got to give up magic. And I love magic. Like, I am the guy who I'll go to the castle and I'll be working and I feel like a 5-year-old kid walking in.
Yeah.
Like, I love it, everything about it. But then in the back of my mind, and this kind of ties in with the podcast, is like, there's that little thing that goes, every successful entertainer that I can point at and go, he was a magician. It's always he was a magician. Hey, did you know Steve Martin used to be a magician? Did you know Johnny Carson used to be a magician? Harry Anderson from Night Court used to be like, you know what I mean? It's like everybody used, and then it's like at a certain point they go, well, if I really want to make money or have a fan base, I gotta.
Whenever I come into moments of that, because look, this is the thing that we push up against all the time.
Yeah.
We want to entertain people. Occasionally want to push the conversation. We want to make somebody think about something. Right.
Yep.
I think in entertainment there's those two sides of it. There's the distract and have fun from real life and enjoy it, like, you know, like Men in Black. It's a fun movie. It's just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's the movie like, I don't know, maybe Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind, where it makes you think a little. It's art that says, hey, stop for a second and consider life. Even with both of those, and even with movies like the Marvel movies that make billions, there isn't always a market to make money off of art and creativity and entertainment. There's still this idea that it's frivolous, and almost this idea of like, of course, you're playing pretend. What'd you really think with your playing pretend?
Right.
Except that, first off, it's really necessary. It's super important.
It's critical.
And second, I say this to myself constantly. If I had done this, if I set out to make money, if that was the issue, if that was my goal, then I would have been a lawyer. Like, I would have done something different.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, I think of it like this. Like, you might say a magician, to get great, to get successful, don't be a magician. But then I would counter with, yeah, but go down. Like, I can sit down and watch Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants, and that's like a doctorate. That is, that is art.
It is art.
Because beyond the card tricks, right? Beyond what he's doing with the actual magic, the way he presents it is also a masterclass in performance. Because he is. When I played basketball, we used to call it, if a guy could dribble really well, he had the ball on a string, right? You can just pull it in any direction.
Complete
that
control.
Is him knowing exactly how to set up every single beat of that to get every last bit of marrow out of that bone.
I'm old enough now. I'm not that old. I'm 35. I don't know how old
30,
you are.
32.
Okay, so we're in. What we both like Saved by the Bell. So
it's perfect. Yeah, it's the only relevant generation.
Right? Come on. There is a newer generation coming up. You know, there's the 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And it's so funny when you meet guys who want to do entertainment, but their thing is like, I want to be a YouTube sensation. It's one thing to want to connect with an audience because you have created something that you want people to experience. It's another thing to just want an audience just to have an audience. And then you think, and then what? To what end, you know?
You know, I started my quote-unquote career in entertainment in New York as an actor who was taking classes and auditioning and studying, theater and on-camera stuff in that area. And there was a feeling that we always had, which was when you audition, there are 10,000 people that they're whittling down to one. And the reason the process is so difficult is because it all gets watered down by, nobody owns anything.
Right.
But by all these people who are in there for the quote-unquote wrong reasons, who don't necessarily get it or aren't working towards it, or, like the idea of fame, like that's something I can relate to. There's a time in my life where I was seeking the idea of like, oh, well, one day you're going to be just a big star. Like, that's how it works. You do this thing, then you're a star, and everyone loves it, and you continue to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I hit about probably 27, 28, 29, and I realized, no, like, my goal is to be goddamn good.
Right.
Is to be lights out, hands down, good. Especially as a comedian, the idea is I should be anywhere at any time, and if you hand me a microphone,
you can do it.
I'm just good at that thing.
And no matter what the audience is. Because I know there's some people who would say, no, there's a specific audience that I connect with. But you would say, like, if it's funny, it should be funny to anybody.
I go a step further with that idea.
Yeah.
We're of the same generation, and I consider myself somewhat old school in how I am.
Okay.
I also do. I not only love wrestling, but I take a lot of lessons from it. So, for instance, there's a wrestler named Samoa Joe, who on Roddy Piper's podcast once said, 20% of it is getting to the dance, 80% of it is being able to dance once you get there. Which to me speaks that idea of like, okay, you want the spotlight, there you go. But now that you have it, like, you don't even know what
to do.
Or, or the spotlight won't matter at all until you can carry your weight as the entertainer.
Yeah.
So in that same vein, and with pro wrestling and with my older school approach to it, my idea is not simply that my joke should be able to play across the board, or I should be able to play it across the board.
Right.
I should be able to, as a performer, walk into any room, read them, feel that audience, that ethereal thing that I know you can understand, that ethereal thing that you can't see or hear, but if you shut everything else up, you can just feel it in the air.
It's a connection. You're like, we're connected right now.
And
like,
play to that audience.
Yeah.
Now, especially with magic, I think some of our art forms that are lost with the overabundance of recording and displaying what we do.
With stand-up comedy, there used to be a time, and talk about an old school approach, there used to be a time where a guy would put together an act. That was the thing. Comedians had an act, and they did this act. They would work on it for 30 years, and they would perform that hour-long set or hour and a half everywhere they went. And you could do that because you didn't have, you're in Cleveland tonight and they record it and put it on YouTube, and tomorrow you're in, Baltimore.
And they've already seen that
and they've already seen it. And they think it's old, but you just did it last night.
And it misses that other aspect of, as we were saying, like the connection of there. Like, I'm playing to you right now. Like, it's not just about you heard this joke. It's about I'm telling this joke. And there's two sides of that. I'm telling this joke specifically for you. And then on that deeper side, what I've learned as a comedian is you're really telling the joke for yourself. And that's how you quote unquote get over. It's when I'm as a comedian asking for you to laugh or really playing it for you versus this this idea of I was going to be up here holding this microphone anyway. You guys happen to be here listening, but I was going to do this no matter what. I had this on my mind, and I was going to discuss it to an empty room if you didn't show up. And that confidence of the laid back, like, doesn't matter if you're here or not. I was going to be here doing this.
Wow, that reminds me. Have you read Steve Martin's Born Standing Up?
I read that for the first time this summer.
Oh man,
it changed my life in the way that reading Catcher in the Rye changed my life.
Yeah.
It was a new perspective on everything.
He tells that story. I think he was in San Francisco at the time, and he had decided, I'm not gonna open anymore. I'm only gonna headline.
Yeah.
And so he books this week at a space in San Francisco, and he said that week nobody showed up.
Yeah.
It was just the doorman, but he got up every night and he did it to an empty room. Because can you imagine?
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, he's doing stadiums.
I can relate. We were just talking about this before we started. I get booked once a year to go play a community theater back in Connecticut around where I grew up and where I performed at. And true story, every time I go out there for the past 3 years now I'll go out the night before and perform in that room to lay out my set.
Yeah.
Because as a stand-up also, like, most of my sets are 5 minutes long at open mics.
Right.
Maybe I'll get 10 minutes somewhere.
Yeah.
But then when you talk about expanding your set to 45 minutes or an hour, putting that all back to back together, sometimes the first time I get a chance to do it is in that empty theater.
Right.
By myself, alone. And I'll say, I, both joking and serious, I've had some of the best sets of my life in an empty room entirely.
That's wild. You think, man, if only people were here.
The other side of it is, as a comedian, when we're performing at open mics, the majority of the time you're performing to maybe 4 people who are other comedians whose heads are in their phones, as they should be, preparing for their couple of minutes. And so in that age-old question of, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, if nobody came to the show, would I still perform? Hell yeah. I perform most of my stand-up sets with no one there to begin with. So if anyone shows up, it's great, but I'm used to performing it to nobody.
Yeah.
We've already answered the question, would we do it if nobody was around?
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, that's the important part of, I was going to do this for myself anyway. It was important for me to self-express today and get this off my chest. If there's 10 people there, it's great. If there's 50 people, even better. If you want to hear this, that's fantastic. But this was still the funniest thing I thought of all day, and I had to say it out loud.
Yeah. Do you get those moments where you come up with, you're sitting around the house or you're working or you're at the park and something pops in your mind and you're like, I'm putting this on stage tonight. I'm going to go talk about this.
Oh, absolutely.
That's...
And part of my writing process is getting to the open mic early and sitting and writing what I think about that day, trying to expand on something I already have. Open mics especially are kind of like basketball practice. It's to test something out. It's to try to refine I've gone up on stage specifically not working jokes, but working like demeanor. When will I pull the mic out of the mic stand versus put it back? What do I, things like that.
Those kind of things make a difference.
And we all have to find our own version of it.
Exactly.
A lot of what drove me towards performance and entertainment was this like abundance of energy that I would have when I was younger. And then as I grew, it continued. And then what I learned as I grew was that the more I not just harnessed the energy, one of the first directors I ever had on a stage play, I was doing La Cage aux Folles in Stamford, Connecticut. I was going to sing this solo, and I did it one time, and she was like, all right, great. Now, stand in one spot, don't move, and just sing. And like what you just did, it's this moment of like, that's the most powerful thing in the world.
Yeah.
Don't move. Can I curse on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't fucking move.
Yeah.
Stop moving.
Yeah.
Now where I'm at, I understand it in a different way, which is I've become over the last year and a half or so, especially with working with a dinosaur at the theme park, obsessed with the idea of building and releasing tension.
I visited the park with some friends. I just am amazed with the feeling that is captured. First you walk up and you're like, oh, that's cool, a dinosaur. And then 10 seconds later, you forget you're in a theme park. You forget that you bought a ticket. I swear, you go, I'm in Jurassic Park. And this is a real dinosaur. It really is a magical moment.
I am sometimes too committed to the idea of trying to make that dinosaur real. I have proverbially fallen flat on my face a couple times trying so hard to get that
Yeah.
And so that idea of just don't move, just stand there and do the thing. So then when I got on stage with stand up, I wound up developing certain aspects of my style that felt like at first they were like, but that doesn't feel quote unquote like me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I wanted to be, I wanted to be more movement, more loud, more this. And then I recognized, but I'm far more effective when I stop and I ponder on stage and I let the moments breathe. And
I have a group that I do a lot of events for. And the organizer of this event said, hey, can I give you just some thoughts? And whenever people say that, I just think, okay, really listen to this. Because, I mean, obviously these people wouldn't have me here if they didn't feel good about me being here. You know what I mean? Like, I think so often as performers, we're like, but this is the way I do it, you know?
Yeah.
They said, that was great, but next time, just slow down. Like, just go up there, and I would come out the gate just rah rah rah, you know, like I'm at 9 or 10 from the first word.
Yeah.
And what he told me, and this was so encouraging and really has helped me since, is he's like, you're stepping into an environment that already has a feel. Like, the room already has, people have been talking and they've been connecting, they've been mingling, and you don't know like what the vibe is. Catch the vibe, start where they are, and then invite them to go somewhere else. And it made all the difference in the world for me.
It's the infuriating part of the idea that do less. Always do less.
Yes.
It's with acting, with comedy, with anything. Even as simple, right? The great example that I discussed with one of my friends one time was in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Do you know how much work Bryan Cranston's clothes did for him? Like, just wearing those khakis and the
Just
button-up
normal
shirt
clothes.
with the glasses, like
Yeah.
that already did so much for us.
Right.
That what he has to do is far less than he thinks he does, because he's already like that was Walter White. You throw on those wallabies, he's Walter
Right.
White. You're good to
Right.
go. Like, that's
Yeah.
the other one. You said it. I learned so much from pro wrestling, even just as a fan before I started working. Do you know Scott Hall, the guy who played Razor Ramon? He's part of the NWO.
Okay. Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes that I apply to life, not just performance. But his big thing was always, if you think you're going too slow, slow down. And it's that idea that if you think to yourself, man, I'm going too slow, well, you're already going too fast then, brother. Slow down. Slow down, do less.
Yeah.
And my favorite performers now are the ones who do very little, who slow down, who take their... If everything we do is equatable to a movie somehow, then all of the big grand things we do, whether it's a joke or an illusion, are the big special effects.
Yeah.
The faster you run through them,
Yeah.
the more you're going to need, the less you're going to have, and the less value each one has.
Right.
Right? But if I take my time and put 2 minutes in between those big, quote-unquote, high spots, the big moves, the big special effects, then each one of those has more impact, and they can mean more, and they can absorb. It's... At the park, if the dinosaur and I do something and we don't let that moment settle, like there's 500 people watching. Each one of them has to have the moment. As a stand-up, somebody told me, I've had this idea 1,000 times in my own head. Is that the cat?
It's the cat. She's trying to sabotage us.
I told you.
Oh, there's Link. You said Lincoln again. Oh man, I'm gonna have to edit this so much.
It's gonna be so many meows. It's gonna be like a Jingle Cats album.
Lincoln's cat just tried to unplug our recording equipment. And then went over and rolled on his back like, come pet me. That's why you exist, humans. Sorry, go back.
So as a comedian, though, any one of my jokes, I've obviously had that thought for a while. I've played with it. I've gone back and forth. But ostensibly, that's the first time the audience is ever hearing that thing and thinking that thing.
Yeah.
So when I say it, I need to give somebody a chance to hear it, listen to it, absorb it, and process it.
Yeah.
Before moving on to the next thing. And if you insert that right before a punchline, that's that building the tension and then releasing it.
Right. This morning I did 3 junior high school assemblies.
That's genius to me.
3.
I've been writing hardcore trying to get kid jokes.
Oh man, it is
like
so
trying to come
fun.
up with what I would do. Like, could I play in elementary school? Could I play in middle school?
You know what's funny is you would think that's so hard until you get there and you realize I was a junior high kid. I know what's funny. And what's funny to a junior higher now is what was funny when we were watching Saved by the Bell. I was doing this bit that I've been doing, this routine, and I have a couple of like punchy joke tags. And there was this one that just wasn't landing. And it hasn't been the past couple of times I did it. And then today was kind of fun as I was doing 3 back-to-back assemblies, right?
Yeah.
So I had like the 6th graders, then the 7th graders, then the 8th graders. And so I kept tweaking it a little bit, and all I did was leave a little bit more space in between tags, and all of a sudden it worked.
You let them breathe.
And it was because they were still thinking about the last thing, and they totally missed this one, you know?
And that, like we'd said, do less and slow down, and all of that stuff falls into place.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and how much of that is applicable into life, and just like in life in general, and like how many times we get so freaked out about stuff, and it's like when you just slow down and go, okay.
All right, what do they say? Worrying is cashing a check that hasn't been written yet, or something,
Yeah,
something like that.
that sounds good.
Along the line,
Yeah.
just letting things, just having the patience, understanding. This is something I had to grow into as a human being. That life isn't actually a movie or a sitcom, and that in between all of the important parts are edited out long stretches of nothing happening.
Oh, that's so good.
Long stretches of, we
Yeah.
got into the fight at 7 o'clock this morning, but we're not going to have a chance to talk about it till tomorrow at 5 p.m. And nothing changes in between, so you just got to sit in it, you know? Or you put out whatever it is, the idea, and then it takes time to come back around.
Yeah. Well, we are so, I mean, everything is so accessible to us now. Like, you talk about, like, instant gratification.
Yeah.
Like, I think social media and all that, I sound like an old man, but I think that plays into so much of us feeling like, okay, at this point in my career, I should be here. At this point in my relationships, I should be here. As opposed to just going, you know what? Quit looking at everybody else's crap and thinking that's what your life is supposed to look like. Like, just be you and do your thing, and that's how you have people do stuff. Sorry, this cat is killing me.
Don't give him an inch.
I need
don't
to
give
not.
him an inch.
I'm sorry. Oh,
He's doing this for the attention.
I wish you guys.
This
could
is
see
not a
this.
visual medium, Lincoln.
This
You're not
is
a part
not.
of this.
I'm sorry. Where were we at, man? See, we'll edit out this long pause.
Nah, leave
But
this
yeah,
in,
no.
man.
Oh, we were just talking
They'll
about.
enjoy this.
We were just talking about.
This is the part. Don't edit this out because this is exactly what
This is
we're
what
talking
we're
about.
talking about, man.
Sometimes things are just breathing.
Yeah.
And right now we're just breathing in between.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Life may be totally different. It should be totally different a year from now. Like the things that you're loving, maybe you won't not doing those. The things you're hating, maybe you're doing something you like better, you know? And just,
How different are they for you from last year?
oh my gosh. Totally different.
As long as you progressed in some way.
Oh yeah.
Or you know what? Just staying alive is enough of a challenge. Just being alive after another year is
Right.
already like.
Isn't that
do you
crazy?
know the infinitesimal ways we can die out there every
The
day?
entire world is trying to kill us.
We are living miracles that we should screw this up
Right.
at every turn.
Oh, yeah.
Traffic should not work.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever done like choreography for a dance?
Yes.
You know how hard it is to get 20 people to do the same
It's
thing?
insane. Yeah.
There's hundreds of people on that highway at 70 miles an hour.
Right.
With only a vague set of rules that nobody follows, and yet there's not that many accidents.
Yeah.
All
And
things
everybody's on their
considered.
phone.
Oh God.
And then we got Waze telling us how to drive. We should all be dead right now. It is, man.
I drive a scooter. I should especially be dead.
Do you
right
drive
now.
a scooter?
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh, you are the most interesting man in the world, I swear.
I appreciate that because it most times feels like I haven't grown up enough
Oh no,
to
I
afford
love
a car.
It. I'm telling you, I think it makes so much sense. I told my wife if we lived closer to the city, I would have a scooter. It just makes so much sense.
I'm saving up for either a motorcycle or some kind of car, but having a scooter changes. First off, so much easier to park.
Oh yeah.
It is quicker around things. Like I don't take it on the highway, but just you know even here down to Hollywood is like I'll take Laurel Canyon, but I can cut around people. I can cut through things.
Right. Well, in California too, you can use the in between the lanes as a lane if
Yep.
you're a bike or a scooter.
Yep.
Which then increases your odds of dying. Like
Exactly.
we just talked about.
Exactly.
But it really saves time.
And sometimes it's like living in an action movie where I'm like, okay, is this the day? Fast and Furious, let's go.
I love that. Driving in LA, there's so many times where you're like, oh man, that was close.
I laid on my horn to someone this morning who turned out of like the parking lot, and I was just like, come on, you didn't see me, and I laid on that horn for, I know it was over 10 seconds.
On your
because
scooter
it
horn?
felt like 30, yeah.
Was it like, yeah, I am so angry.
Hey, take me seriously. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
Oh man. How long have you been in LA now? Because you grew up back east.
November 14th was my 3-year anniversary.
Bro, I am seriously amazed at all the things that you are doing. I mean, you talk about how different life was. I mean, for you 3 years ago, what was 3 years ago, man? You're in Connecticut then?
So growing up, I was a basketball player.
Yeah.
And up through high school, I didn't
the hoop dreams.
Oh man, living the hoop dreams. Anthony Anderson teaching me that killer crossover. I wanted to play. I wasn't going to play, so by the end of high school, I was getting ready to coach basketball.
Okay.
I went to Quinnipiac University with the intention of working there 2 years and transferring to. The ultimate goal was Duke, but some higher program to work with them to transition into being a college and professional level coach.
Yeah.
And then senior year of high school, right before the basketball season started, I got tricked into doing a play. We did a non-musical version of Fame.
And how did that go? Who convinced you to do it?
So,
Was this a
Steven
student,
Ginsberg.
or-
I've
okay.
called him out 100 times over. Steven Ginsberg was a good friend of mine. I was one of those kids who I didn't have a clique. I had one best friend who went to an alternate school. He went to the Catholic school, so we didn't go to school together.
Yeah.
And then I knew everyone. So I had friends on the basketball team, and then I was in honors class. I had friends there.
Do you find that with a lot of comedians that's the case? For me growing up, I didn't have one group I hung out with, but I was cool with everybody.
I think there's a lot more of that.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles especially.
Okay.
And when we get to the transition out here, I
Yeah.
love this town. I love the community that we have out here.
Yeah.
All of it from top to bottom. I think Los Angeles, I fit well with it. It fits well with me.
Yeah.
And anyone who's listening to this who's considering moving to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
I found that, especially coming from the East Coast, 90% of the things that I was told most of my life about Los Angeles were completely fictional, made up by people who'd never actually gone to Los Angeles.
And what were you told?
That everybody is shallow, that everyone is soulless, that there isn't...
Right.
For instance, there isn't somebody who would come to your apartment on a Tuesday afternoon and just sit and have a conversation about your art and how
Yeah.
to better further both of your arts. Like that's...
Right.
But what I found when I got here was the entire comedy community was encouraging.
Yeah.
Because each one of us understood that we're different products.
Oh, yeah.
A good friend of mine who I absolutely adore, Jamar Neighbors.
Yeah.
I think is going to be one of the biggest comedians ever. He and I, no matter what, are totally separate products.
Right.
He's not me and I'm not him. We can't do what each other does. So any success that he gets was meant for him.
That is so healthy, man.
And was capitalized on by him because I would have never, the same way as, Morgan Freeman and Hugh Grant will never be against each other for the same part.
Exactly. And us doing well only helps each other.
Rising tides lift all boats.
Exactly. And if I mean, I do comedy, but I it's based around a magic act. And so it's like, I always say, good magicians are not competition. Bad magicians are competition.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody has a magician at their company Christmas party and they suck, they will never have a magician again.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do that with singers. They don't go, oh, we had a singer once and they weren't good, so we're never.
Yeah.
No, but with magic, they do that. But if someone has a great entertainer, then they're going to consider doing that again, and maybe next time they'll hire me or
Yeah.
they'll hire you, or you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't hurt us to help. Guys, let's help each other.
Now,
Like-
does somebody like Justin Willman, who then goes into a different avenue,
Yeah.
does that help as well? Because it brings attention in a different way.
totally.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, I mean, Justin has done TV hosting, and now does a lot of comedy shows and
He's-
theatrical stuff, and I mean,
This is not going to come as a shock. He's so good.
he's amazing.
So we've used him. I'm sure you know this, but we used him when we roasted Houdini. He played
Yeah.
Harry Houdini, and when we roasted Harry Potter, he played Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And those were two roasts where we also approached it as these we need him.
Yeah,
Though we weren't going to do Houdini until Justin was like, I'm available that day. That
love
was
it.
And same with Harry Potter. If he had said no that day, I probably we would have pushed that roast back and done someone else that day.
Yeah.
So his ability then to take what he did and translate it to a different venue.
It's amazing.
First off, he knows how to tune into that crowd.
Yeah,
And anything that he couldn't think of on his own, he also is smart enough to then go ask for help from people.
Right.
Everything always ties into itself. There's no form of entertainment that is somehow not connected to another form.
right.
Yep.
Yep.
I work with pro wrestlers.
Yep.
Those pro wrestlers get booked on commercials. Why? Because they need a big muscled up guy
Yeah.
at some point.
Yep.
right? And they understand the concept of a story. I do comedy. Well, that leads to hosting things
Right.
as well, because like, as you know how to stand in front of people. Well, eventually someone's like, okay, well, we just need someone to stand in front of people and talk. Can you do that?
Right. And we want it to be entertaining, and we don't want it to
Exactly.
take 4 hours when it only needs to take 30 minutes.
Exactly.
We're going to go into teaching?
I was going to go into basketball
coach.
I wanted to coach, and then I did a play. Like I said, Steve Ginsburg asked me, because I had friends in all different areas, and he was like, Eddie, there's this part in this play. We need guys.
Yeah.
We always need guys
Oh, yeah.
as actors. He's kind of a loudmouth. He's crazy. He's wild. He's funny. I think you'd be great. And
Yeah.
I auditioned. I ended up reading with everyone else's audition. Like, I never had my own I was like, they were like, stand in with that person. I read, stand in with that person. And I got to play Ralph Garcia,
Nice.
one of the leads in that. And that's one of those, I can look you in the eye, I can be honest. Like, that was one of those, like, opening night.
Yeah.
I remember walking on stage for the first time. For the first real time as a performer. And in front of me is 500 people. Like, it was packed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, they are all paying attention to me right now. Good, let's go. Like,
Wow.
that sense of this is it.
This is it.
You know, like,
Which is crazy because you've spent how many years pursuing basketball, which you love, but
Yeah.
thinking that was it. That was the thing. And probably a little bit, I mean, how much were you a little bit sad that didn't become the thing? Like,
oh my God, true story. I talked about it in therapy today. Yeah. In therapy today, I was like, there is part of me that is always sad that I didn't get a chance to win a championship. Like, that was a thing that would have just taken, because I'm a tipping point kind of guy. I'm
Okay.
like, yes, there are predispositions to certain things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you do something over and over again, you get really good at it.
oh yeah.
And if you apply yourself, there's a path to it.
Oh, yeah.
And I would not have been, make no bones about it, I would not have been Magic Johnson, which I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I, at best, would have been maybe a play in Europe for a little while, or maybe over here. And if I got to the NBA, I'd have been a bench role player kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do believe that what you want is right in front of you.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say I was just listening to. I feel like I always end up quoting Seinfeld.
He's brilliant. He's great.
But he's like, you want to know who's in entertainment? The people who want to do it more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you do it and just work at it. And then today I was listening to Pete Holmes just had Louis Anderson on his podcast.
Oh, wow.
And Louis Anderson, they were asking about writing, and he's like, it's a job, you just do it. All of this, I'm not inspired. He's like, you wake up at 9 a.m., you clock in, you write till 4, and you're going to write stuff.
We all got into this stuff, for lack of a better word, because there's a little kid inside of us, right? We're placating that idea that this is fun. It's fun to do magic. It's fun to play with wrestlers and dinosaurs. And then there's this other aspect, which is that it's a job and it's a business.
Right.
And I've found that there are a lot of people who, when they get this close to it, start to recognize that, and that throws them for a loop. This idea that our self-expression and our creativity and this magic, whether literal or figurative magic, like, all we want to do is have fun and pretend and make believe and make people go, wow, that's awesome, or think about that idea.
Right.
But then there is an aspect of, like, we talked about this right before we went on, of Alec Baldwin saying to Tina Fey, hey, Liz Lemon, calm down, you make jokes in between commercials.
Right.
That there's a business side, and that it is a job, that we have to treat it in some respects as clock in and do your work.
Yeah.
Balancing that I think is probably the toughest, the thing that may break more hearts in entertainment than anything else, which is, yeah, it's fun and it's cool and there's magic to be made, but those moments of perfection, 52 assistants,
Right.
that doesn't
No.
just happen.
No.
And that didn't have to land. Like,
Right.
The moments of greatness where you're like, Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock or whatever it is, where you're
Right.
like, there's real magic. That's by chance. That's random. There's no way to know that Pirates of the Caribbean was going to be that good until it was that good. It just happened to, like, perfection and moments of greatness and that magic.
Yeah.
You strive for it every day, but there's also 90% of the work we do is chopping trees down until
Right.
one moment that tree or whatever it is, it's just beautiful. It's magic. It's great.
You get to a certain point where you go like, okay, it does take time. Like you said, you've got to stick with it. You got to work at it. You got to put the time in. But then there's that thing of going, okay, I've also got to pay my bills. At what point do I go, I'm either going to, sacrifice art.
Yeah. And when and where do you sacrifice it?
Right.
Right. That's the other thing. That's the culture shock for me personally too, is recognizing that it's not just a dream or a thing. Like there is we met on set doing a fake commercial. It wasn't even a real like I'm saying that because no one's going to be able to find it online.
Oh yeah.
Where you got to play a magician in Vegas and they dressed me up like a blue man because I was bald so they could paint my head blue.
Yeah. And we got shoved in a limousine for like 14 hours or whatever.
With a guy who wasn't creative trying to direct it because he was paying for it. And that's when you realize like, okay, these are the days where I am collecting a paycheck for it.
Yeah.
Hopefully somewhere in our hearts we're like, well, at least I'm not at a desk kind of thing.
Right.
But there is for me, I used to think that every choice someone made in their career was somehow related to the end goal.
Okay.
And then I learned that no, all those choices were just made and the end goal happened. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Right? Like neither one of us turned down that commercial because it didn't fit our brand or it didn't work with what we were doing. It was like, no, you want to paint me up blue? Paint me blue. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Do you want me to referee? You want me to go do this thing over here?
Yeah.
Say yes to everything.
Right.
Because Steve Martin's book wasn't written with a purpose. He didn't know what that story was going to look like at the end. He was just like, I'll go work at Disney, and then I'll go work at Knott's Berry Farm for a little, and then there's this opportunity here that I'll take. And
well, and like you said, it's all connected. I mean, if we didn't do that silly, ridiculous commercial, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be sharing this with whatever this ends up being. And that's where I think, I mean, you're talking about like the thing in LA and like the interconnectivity. Like even for us to mention people, and it's like, oh, I haven't worked with them, but I know, you know, guys that know them or have. I mean, we're all connected and
and
take
all
every
supportive.
opportunity. And
I've yet to come across a comedian who hasn't been positive. I've also found the more success somebody has had with their career, the nicer and easier they are to work with.
Isn't that interesting?
Which is the opposite of what everyone tells you.
Right.
Except that what I assume, my projection is, well, they're comfortable.
Right.
Like, they found the acceptance. Like, imagine if our art was making us a good living and everyone was appreciating. Like, I would be so relaxed.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, yeah, no, life's great. Everyone loves that thing I just did.
Yeah.
Versus, like, I'm not going to say the struggle. It is the challenge of finding our voice and our way to get our art and creativity out there.
That's so good. And I don't think it's one of these things where it's like, well, I'm going to be a jerk to everybody, and then when I make it, then I'll be generous. It's like,
You're right.
I mean, even if they didn't have the opportunity to be as generous then, they were still generous with what they had. Like
just being a nice person.
Like, I really do believe that, like, just being good to people
well, because
makes a difference.
That industrial shoot we were on is a prime example.
Yeah.
It's a collection of probably about 50 people in total who were working on that, crammed into what was a sound stage, which is really just a big warehouse, which is empty.
Yeah.
Working on this one thing that is entirely ridiculous in and of itself, with moments of great fun. Like you kept working the bit about the cards flying everywhere. We all got enjoyment out of that, you know? And so something I was also taught very early on in theater and acting was like, you have to be fun to be around on set, because for that 30 seconds it's going to take 14 hours. And
it's true. And people want to work with people that they want to hang out with, because that's what you're doing most of the time.
Exactly.
Most of show business is sitting around waiting for the show to happen.
Exactly. It's the proverbial hurry up and wait.
Oh man. I mean, even doing road gigs and stuff, it's like you're not gonna have someone open for you or work with you that you're not gonna be comfortable sitting in a car for 12 hours with.
Exactly.
Because that is, I mean, if I do a show, I did this show in Boston a couple weeks ago. I performed a 30-minute set, and then I emceed. Probably a total of an hour and 15 minutes I worked, but I was gone for 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine being, you know what I mean? You got to be around people during that time that are life-giving, and it's like, okay, this is fun, and we can...
You're not We are not paid for the show or the performance. We are paid to get to the shows and the performance. That's the it's the travel, it's the practice, it's everything. The shows are the gimmies.
Yeah.
Like that's when you get to release it all. And you're
Right.
like, this is the fun side.
Yeah.
Ryan, my co-host, is coming over tonight. We're gonna hang out. We talk about, like, we make a genuine effort to be not to be friends outside, but to spend time outside of work.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. It's very important.
So you come to LA. Well, you're at the time you were coaching.
So I'm in Connecticut.
We know what got you
At
into
19,
acting.
I
What
quit
got
college. I dropped out of college.
Yeah.
Because I was at Quinnipiac. I dropped out. I said, I want to be an actor. This is not the school I should be at for acting. I start taking classes in the city. I went to HB Studios. I went to West Barron. I did one of those wonderful. Have you ever heard of, like, John Robert Powers?
you? Oh yeah,
That's one of those
Yeah, yeah.
factory
Yep.
mills where it's conceptually a waste of money, but
Yeah.
where I was coming from, my mother was a big fan of mine, a supporter, I should
Yeah.
say. And so we were just like, we don't know any other thing, start here. And that's where I met my
Yeah.
very first acting coach, Frank Petrilli, who taught me almost everything I still base things on. So I would audition in the city, take classes in the city, perform in community theater in Connecticut. There's a great community of community theater out there, but also just the opportunity to always perform. That's the other thing is, so many times as a performer myself, and I'll see it in other people, there's this idea that we'll only perform when it matters or here or there. Like, no, like the idea is like,
Yeah.
I always want to perform, right?
Right.
This week, I have the opportunity to perform on Thursday and Friday at the park. I'm going to skip Thanksgiving because there's the opportunity to perform. I'll go where there's a
Yeah.
performance. Like, I've always just
Right.
said as a comedian, if there's a microphone, that's where I am.
Well, in stage time is what gets you there.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, like you just said, I want to do something that matters. I mean, I'm trying to think of somebody. I'll just use Bo Burnham as
Yeah,
an example. Have you
love
seen
him.
his Make Happy?
I've not
His new-
watched the most recent, but I'm
Oh my
a
goodness.
huge fan of his because he
Yeah.
also does something that's outside of what I would do.
Yeah.
Like, I could never. If you left me in a room for
Yeah.
a month, I wouldn't come up with his act.
It's crazy.
because I have a
Yeah,
whole
it's
different
amazing.
style. So he's.
Yeah.
I loved his first, whatever the first words,
Yeah.
whatever the first one
Oh,
was. When
man.
I saw it, that changed a lot for me. 'Cause he
I-
also has that song "Art Is Dead."
Yeah.
Where he goes, "Art is dead," and you remember that one?
Yeah, yeah.
That one touched me so much, and that drove me to come out west. Actually,
Yeah. Wow. I would say don't start watching it unless you've got an hour and 15 that's completely uninterrupted, because I watched this Make Happy special. I wept at the end of this thing. Like, it's just so well done and so hilarious and poignant and fantastic. But I use him as an example because I think people look at that and go, I want to create art like that. Like, I don't want to perform unless I can do 30 minutes and I get to do this introspective piece. And it's like, you know what? Unless you're going to go drive 2 hours to do a bar mitzvah,
you can't
You're
only
not-
want the Netflix special.
Yeah,
you have
you
to
can't
want
do
the 2
that.
minutes over here
do you know?
and
Yeah,
everything.
The reason he could do that is because for 3 years he went and did every opportunity he could and worked out this bit in every environment. You know what I mean? It's like,
Do you know the other thing that hits me about stuff like that?
What's
like
that?
About a movie or about a Netflix special or an hour set that you did, even a Shakespeare play.
yeah,
That's someone's best attempt to get what they saw in their head out. And as a fan of those things for the longest of times, I just assumed like that was the ultimate final product. When in actuality, now that I'm creating myself, I'm like, oh no, like
Right.
what you see, you might hold as this gestalt, this perfection, this thing. No, that was
No.
just my best
that's
attempt
the
that
be-
day.
Yes,
It's still wildly flawed in my opinion. I did the shows in October.
yeah.
So much editing I did the night after where I was like, flip that
Yes.
joke, place
If I
this
would've-
here.
I just had this conversation with my buddy Micah because I grew up playing guitar, and I still play guitar from time to time. I am not a guitarist by any means.
You're self-expressive and you're creative.
Yeah.
Playing guitar is the same thing as doing a
Yeah,
magic trick. It touches
exactly.
the same thing in us.
And I was talking to Micah because I said I would get so frustrated playing because I could hear it in my head. Like, I could so perfectly hear, I want to do this, but I could not translate from my mind to my hands
Yeah.
to get out what was inside of me. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have, and the only thing that was missing was was time, was practice, was the ability that came from just doing the thing you don't like enough to where it becomes the thing that you feel like is art.
Except Jimi Hendrix, what he was playing still wasn't perfection. It's not like look, maybe guys like Jimmy and Miles Davis have their moments where like Kind of Blue is going to be the standard forevermore.
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's exactly what he intended it to sound like the whole time.
Whoa.
Right? Like The Dark Knight is a quote-unquote perfect movie, but that doesn't mean Christopher Nolan hit every beat that he wanted to. That's what came out at the end. So many people stop themselves from creating because of that fear of it not being good enough. What took me a long time to learn is that done is better than good.
Oh, man. Dude, say that again.
So long.
Say
it took me,
that again.
High school, I didn't know this.
Oh, my goodness.
Done is better than good. And that's how a movie like Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2 gets made. There's 2 of those motherfuckers. I know. There was a sequel. Because someone finished the script, and someone else who's waiting to write their script is like, I gotta make it perfect. No, you don't, because someone else is finishing something.
They're sitting in their apartment watching Beverly Hills Chihuahua and going, I've got this art, but this crap's being made. And it's like, they finished it.
And they
did the work.
They just did it.
Such a good conversation. We sat down, this was a few weeks ago that we talked, and I can't stop thinking about this idea of done is better than good. So guys, get out there, finish some stuff. Let the world see your art. If you need help with that, you might want to check out counterculturesociety.com. Counterculture Society really has this vision to help artists get their work out there. They've helped me so much with this podcast. So reach out to Zach over at counterculturesociety.com. And be sure to check out abouttobreak.com for more information on other episodes. We're going to have some live shows coming up and great stuff. But until then, enjoy your week, guys. I'll see you later.